Police say a man called his ex-girlfriend on the phone as he shot 7 people at a pool party on Sunday. Peter Selis, 49, was depressed about the breakup and did not target his victims, who were black and Hispanic. These victims were just in his presence at the wrong place at the wrong time, said San Diego Police Chief Shelley Zimmerman, ruling out race as a factor in the attack. Selis killed 1 and injured 6 others before being shot dead by police. Officers responded to reports of a shooting at about 1800 hours local time at the upmarket La Jolla Crossroads apartments. Mr. Selis was sitting beside the pool, which was in the same apartment complex where he lived. From his lounge chair he began opening fire on the group, say police. After shooting 2 people, he placed a call to his ex-girlfriend. It is apparent that Selis wanted his ex-girlfriend to listen in as he carried out his rampage, said Mrs. Zimmerman. Selis, who has no known criminal history, continued to speak as he fired on the crowd while they scrambled to flee the pool area. A police helicopter observed him reloading his .45 caliber handgun while still inside the pool area. Moments later police on the ground shot him dead, after he raised his gun to fire on them. In the days before the attack, Selis and his girlfriend had ended their relationship. His family said he was distraught and depressed, police said, but they had no indication that he would resort to violence. Based on the information we have gathered so far, it is very clear that Selis was very despondent over the breakup of his girlfriend, said Mrs. Zimmerman. One witness told KFMB-TV that Selis appeared to be drinking a beer during the gunfire. However, police did not confirm that detail. Another witness said Selis sat in a lawn chair during the incident, and was telling people to leave. Police do not believe Selis knew any of the roughly 30 people at the party. Selis is white and his victims were 4 black women, 2 black men and a Hispanic man, but police have ruled out a hate crime. He was a resident of the same block of flats, where monthly rent ranges between $1,750 and $4,000. According to U.S. media, Selis filed for bankruptcy in 2015. He listed his occupation as a car mechanic in court documents, and said he had 2 children and a stepson. A gunman distraught over a recent breakup calmly reclined in a pool chair as he shot strangers at a birthday party and phoned his ex-girlfriend so she could hear the gunfire and screams of terror, San Diego police said Monday. Before police fatally shot him, Peter Selis killed 1 woman and wounded 6 other people in a rampage that turned a birthday party into bedlam as shots echoed among upscale apartment towers. People ran for their lives and the wounded lay bleeding by the pool. All but 1 of the victims were black and Latino and Selis was white, but police don't think race played a factor. These victims were just in his vicinity when he committed this terrible tragedy, Police Chief Shelley Zimmerman said. What started as a celebration of a friend's birthday party turned into a tragedy of just epic proportion for all those in attendance. Selis, 49, was despondent and depressed over a recent breakup, though family and friends interviewed by police had no hint of any sinister plot. As children splashed in the pool Sunday, a family soaked in a hot tub and others ate chips and hot dogs, the gunman stood out from the crowd of about 35 as he sat by the pool gate wearing a heavy black jacket on a hot day, said Demetrius Griffin, a guest at the party. The shooting began after the man celebrating his 50th birthday approached Selis. Griffin assumed his friend, who was always welcoming, invited the man to join the fun. Instead, he pulled a gun from his waistband, shot the party host twice in the torso and then opened fire on the party, Griffin said. It was very eerie, to say the least, Griffin said. He didn't stand up. He didn't say anything. He just opened fire. Griffin briefly froze and then dropped to the ground as 6 rounds sent people scattering and dropped others on the pool deck. After shooting 2 people, Selis, a resident of the complex, called his ex-girlfriend to tell her what he'd done. Selis stayed on the phone talking to his ex-girlfriend as he continued to fire his weapon, Zimmerman said. It is apparent that Selis wanted his ex-girlfriend to listen in as he carried out his rampage. During the brief call, Selis told the woman that he had shot 2 police. The police were arriving and then made some reference to shooting it out or something along those lines, Assistant Police Chief Brian Ian said. The woman heard 2 more gunshots before the line went dead, he said. At 6:06 p.m., a caller told police 2 people had been shot at the Jolla Crossroads complex on Judicial Drive. Several other callers reported hearing gunfire and people screaming. One victim, 34-year-old Thomas Lee, gave thanks to a security guard at the apartment complex who quickly hustled him and 2 other victims to safety. "That guy saved us a lot of time, getting us to the fire department in a safe zone," said Lee as he sat with his leg bandaged in a wheelchair outside the hospital. The guard's name has not been released. Ricky Gallienz, a student at the University of California, San Diego, said he heard between 8 and 10 gunshots, looked outside his 6th-story apartment and saw a bleeding man running near the pool below. "The whole thing was really emotionally draining, seeing blood everywhere, seeing bodies on the ground, hoping they survived, seeing bloody footsteps of people who ran away," Gallienz said. "There was just so much blood." A police helicopter and officers on the ground arrived about 7 minutes after the first call. The pilot reported seeing multiple victims down and directed officers to Selis, who he said appeared to be reloading his weapon. Selis was killed as he fired his .45 caliber handgun at a sergeant and 2 officers, Zimmerman said. Selis shot 3 black women, 2 black men, a Latino man and a white woman, police said. 6 of the shooting victims were expected to survive, Zimmerman said. Another man was taken to the hospital after he broke his arm running away. Selis, a father who worked as a mechanic at a Ford dealership, filed for federal bankruptcy protection in October 2015, listed $14,000 in assets and $108,000 in liabilities, according to court records. Investigators have not found any notes or evidence in his internet search history to suggest that Selis planned the shooting, Ian said. "There was nothing obvious or public that this was his intention," he said. Griffin, who helped carry a woman shot in the legs to safety, woke up Monday in a panic thinking he was still at the pool. "I was shaking. I started crying," he said. "My eyes got really big as if they were going to pop out of my head, and I kind of rolled over off the couch, onto the floor as if the gunman was still active." The man who killed a woman and wounded 6 others Sunday at a pool party in University City was despondent after a breakup and shot his victims while on the phone with his ex-girlfriend, San Diego Police Chief Shelley Zimmerman said Monday. Peter Selis, 49, lived at the Jolla Crossroads apartments on Judicial Drive and fired into a crowd of poolside partygoers with what was described as a large caliber handgun just after 6 p.m. Sunday, according to San Diego police. Selis, who was reportedly drinking a beer during the gunfire, called his ex-girlfriend during the violent attack to say he had just shot 2 people and police officers had arrived, Zimmerman said. Selis stayed on the phone, talking to his ex-girlfriend as he continued to fire his weapon, Zimmerman said. It is apparent that Selis wanted his ex-girlfriend to listen in as he carried out his rampage. 1 woman died from her injuries. 2 victims remain in critical but stable condition, but they and the other victims are expected to survive, Zimmerman said. Although the shooting victims were identified as 4 black women, 2 black men and a Hispanic man, Zimmerman said Monday that the shooting spree was not planned or racially motivated. The victims just happened to be present at the moment in time that Selis decided to carry out this spontaneous act of violence. There is zero information to indicate that race played a factor in this terrible and horrific crime, Zimmerman said. Several witnesses at the apartment complex called 911 to report the shooting. One witness said the gunman showed no apparent emotion as the carnage unfolded. He was very docile. In his facial expression, no smiling, laughing, talking, Demetrius Griffin, a Seattle area man who attended the party, told CNN. He let off 8 rounds, reloaded, let off another 8, reloaded again. Nobody in the party knew the shooter, who was sitting in close proximity to an exit, Griffin said. As people began scrambling and screaming, the shooter didn't say a single word, he said. A police helicopter crew alerted 3 officers on the ground that Selis had reloaded and was shooting at the partygoers. When police officers arrived, Selis began firing at them. Our sergeant and 2 of the officers shot toward the suspect, striking him, and the suspect was pronounced deceased at the scene, Zimmerman. Mayor Kevin Faulconer praised police and fire personnel for their heroic actions in responding to the situation. Truly quick actions, quick responses, the decisions that they made, absolutely precluded further bloodshed, Faulconer said. It was remarkable teamwork and effort under extraordinary circumstances yesterday. The gunman's family members reportedly told police they knew Selis was depressed after the breakup with his girlfriend, but they had no idea he would carry out the deadly shooting. Selis, a mechanic at a Ford dealership, was also deeply in debt and filed for bankruptcy twice, once in 2009 and again in 2015, according to court records. Police don't believe Selis has a criminal history. Despondent over the end of a relationship, a gunman entered the pool area of his San Diego apartment complex Sunday and began shooting randomly at people gathered for a birthday party, authorities said. At some point during the shooting, 49-year-old Peter Selis took a seat in a lounge chair, pulled out his cell phone and called his ex-girlfriend to tell her he shot 2 people, San Diego Police Chief Shelley Zimmerman said in a news conference Tuesday. Selis kept her on the phone as he continued shooting, killing 1 woman and injuring 6 before police fatally shot him, Zimmerman said. Another person was injured while fleeing the Jolla Crossroads apartment complex. A cell phone video appears to show the gunman reclining in a chair beneath an umbrella, legs crossed as he reloads the gun in his lap, takes aim and pulls the trigger. Though Selis was white and some of the victims were people of color, Zimmerman said there was zero information to suggest the rampage was racially motivated. The victims were targeted for no reason other than their mere presence, Zimmerman said. What started as a celebration of a friend's birthday turned into a tragedy of epic proportions for all those in attendance. He didn't say a single word. The first 911 call came in at 6:08 p.m., reporting 2 people had been shot, Zimmerman said. The second caller described hearing 5 to 6 gunshots and seeing someone outside with a gun. As police responded to the calls, officers in a helicopter above the complex directed ground units to the suspect, she said. 3 officers confronted the shooter, Zimmerman said. He pointed his weapon at them, prompting an exchange of gunfire that killed Selis at the scene. 6 survivors were sent to area hospitals with gunshot wounds. Another person suffered a broken wrist, a broken hand and a concussion from climbing a fence during the shooting. All are expected to recover. Authorities initially identified the shooting victims as 4 black women, 2 black men and a Hispanic male. Investigators learned that one of the victims initially reported to be a black female was actually white. The party started about 3 hours before the gunman showed up around 5:30 p.m., guest Demetrius Griffin wrote on a fundraising site, where the victims are accepting donations for medical expenses. Something about him was strange, Griffin said in the post. All he had was backpack, no book or anything else to suggest a day at the pool. The birthday boy approached the man to invite him into the party, Griffin said. The conversation did not last long. The man pulled out a gun and shot Griffin's friend in the chest before turning his weapon on the crowd. He was very docile. In his facial expression, no smiling, laughing, talking, Griffin told CNN Monday. He let off 8 rounds, reloaded, let off another 8, reloaded again. As people began scrambling and screaming, the shooter didn't say a single word, he said. Partygoer Haley Thames said she and her friend Lauren Chapman were among those who ran for cover. As they ran, they noticed two women who had been shot and were lying in a pool of blood. One of them was Tem's cousin. I turned around and saw family on the ground, and it became all about that, Tem said. Chapman said they helped lead the women out of the pool area to safety. When they reached the street, Chapman flagged down an SUV. The driver cleared out his car and drove the women and another victim to the hospital, Chapman said. San Diego Fire Chief Brian Fennessy later identified the driver as a security guard for the apartment building. At a news conference Monday afternoon, survivor Thomas Billy thanked the driver and the first responders who came to his aid. "It was a terrible experience that we went through, but I'm glad that I'm all right, and I'm glad that most of my friends are all right," he said. What we know about the shooter. Selis broke up with his girlfriend days before the shooting, Zimmerman said. Family members described him as depressed, but said nothing in his behavior suggested this kind of violence. "It is very clear that he was despondent over the breakup," the police chief said. "It is apparent that he wanted his girlfriend to listen in as he carried out his rampage." "Detectives are still looking into Selis' background," she said. "He has no criminal history and one handgun registered in his name." Facing significant debts, he filed for bankruptcy in 2015. He listed his occupation as car mechanic, according to a petition filed in U.S. bankruptcy court in the Southern District of California. "This was a truly horrific and disturbing act. We pray for the victims and thank our first responders. Our city rejects this senseless violence," San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer said at a news conference. Shots ring out in Placid neighborhood. The apartment complex, La Jolla Crossroads, is located near the University of California San Diego campus. Residents describe the complex as typically quiet, a place that college students, physicians and military families, among others, call home. In a span of about 30 minutes, apartment residents heard gunfire, sirens and the screams of those near the main pool, said resident Susan Berry, who was at the property but did not witness the shooting. "People are shocked because it's an affluent neighborhood," Berry said. When asked how he would characterize what happened, Griffin said he would not call it a terrorist act. "But it's terror," he said. Chapman agreed that the most appropriate word to describe what happened was terror. A junior-grade lieutenant in the U.S. Navy, she said she expects to come under attack in war zones abroad, not at home. "I dedicate my life serving my country, understanding that my life is on the line when I'm out there. But at no point in time would I think an act of terror would take place at home in the way that it did,"